Jumping back into the action now here on the show, we're going to continue with our game picks now, looking at the second half of the Sunday slate here with let me get it up for you guys, with the NFC North matchup that we have here at the left-hand corner. We have the Lions taking on the Chicago Bears once again. If you remember their first game on Thanksgiving, it was a nail-biting game, really coming down to the last second where the Bears found a new way to disappoint us in the most surprising and just shocking way. With the time management there at the end of the game, it was really, really bad. So now they have an opportunity to kind of right the ship here in their second matchup with the Lions in Chicago this time. So the Lions are going to be playing in the elements. That's something that is kind of like a running narrative with the Lions also being one of those teams that I guess doesn't play outside too much. Kind of like the Dolphins, but also the complete opposite of the Dolphins because the Lions actually win. But yeah, I mean, it's the second meeting between these two teams, and the injuries just continue to pile up for the Lions. They're coming off of a very bad day last week on Sunday where not only they lost to the Buffalo Bills, but more injuries on top of all the number of injuries that they already have. I think they have 22 players on their injured reserve. I think I saw somewhere leading up into this episode, but it's insane. It's insane because they're not going to have Carlton Davis. They're not going to have Ali McNeil. No David Montgomery, obviously. So huge pieces for the Chicago Bears to kind of take advantage of. But also the Lions have to go into a hostile environment against a team that, again, has really nothing to lose and, essentially win this game because they're fighting off the Vikings and they're fighting off the Eagles for the number one seed. So it's not like the Lions can just mosey on in here and think that they're going to win. It's going to be a tough game, I presume, if the Bears can at least play a little bit better. But really it hasn't looked like they've improved since that game against the Lions because it's been back-to-back games now where they've had 13 points or less. And since really Matt Eberflus has been fired, I don't want to say Thomas Brown hasn't been, living up to the position, but I feel like it's kind of like a lot, kind of like Jeff Ulbrich in New York with how he moved from the defense, solely defense, to being the head coach and how the defense kind of declined. It's looked the same way here. So for the Bears, they have a good opportunity here to have arguably their best win of the season. But I can't convince myself to go with them. I'm going to go with Detroit because even though they lost last week, they still put up like 42 points. So they have the capability of just outscoring the Bears, and I'm going to go with that and pick the Lions to win. I think it's going to be close, but I'm still going to roll with the Lions. Then we look at the game right under that, another huge NFC game that we have here with the Vikings taking on the Seattle Seahawks. We had a situation last week on Sunday Night Football where Geno kind of went down with a knee injury, and there was some concern with that, but it looks like he's fine. He looks like he's ready to go. I'm pretty sure he was a full participant in the later half of the week, so he should be good to go in this game. And it's a huge game for both because, like I mentioned, Minnesota is trying to catch up to the Lions. If for some reason the Lions lost and the Vikings won, that would put them to the first spot in the NFC North. And not only would that mean that, but the Lions would be a wild card team, right, in the wildest of scenarios. So they obviously have that going for them, trying to accomplish that. And also for the Seahawks, just as big a stakes as the Minnesota Vikings because they're tied with the Rams at 8-6, and still they sit outside of the playoffs. They're not even in it right now, so they desperately need a win, especially if the Commanders could lose. They could go to the same record as them potentially. So they desperately need this win at home, especially coming off of a loss last week to the Packers at home, especially. They need this game. So both teams are heading into this with a huge opportunity and a huge prize, essentially, if they win this game. So it should make for an even more entertaining game at the end of it. And I still feel like Seattle is looking for a signature kind of like prove it win, if that makes sense, right? They haven't really been a team where I'm like, wow, like that was very impressive. They played a complete game. They've had nice games. They've had good performances. I mean, the game against San Francisco was a good one in San Fran. I'm trying to think of other ones. I mean, the Cardinals game, the way they dominated them was pretty nice, but I mean, the Atlanta game, I guess, was okay, but really, I haven't seen one that's really been a prove it sort of moment. So that's really what I'm still trying to see from Seattle. And last week, also, Minnesota's offense sort of struggled after they got to what, like 20, 27 points. It was a struggle in that second half. The Bears could have came back, but their offense really wasn't helping them out that much. So there's also that threat, like we mentioned with the Vikings before, that they just kind of stall out a little bit. So it does open up a door for Seattle in that respect, but I'm gonna go with Minnesota regardless because they I don't really watch the Vikings too much, like a complete game where I see like as if I'm watching a Steelers game, but I did watch a good amount of their game against the who was it, the Falcons? No, it was the Bears last week, and they get to the quarterback a lot with Jonathan Grenard, who's exceptional, and all their pass rushers up there are very good, and Brian Flores does a great job. So I feel like they're gonna add a lot more of that, trying to get to Geno and really negate their big plays. So and the fact that their offense is just getting better as well, I'm gonna go with the Vikings in this game. Then the Bills and the Patriots, we could just skip over that. The Bills are gonna win, obviously. Not really. I have nothing written down for them. The Bills are gonna win, so that's that game. Then we got the Jaguars and the Las Vegas Raiders. Two teams, also like the Titans and Colts, that are probably going to be picking near the top 5 or top 7 in this upcoming draft. And for the Raiders, Aiden O'Connell should be back playing at quarterback after Desmond Ridder played for them last week, and it went terribly. So Aiden O'Connell should be in there again. But the Jaguars just had a pretty decent day on offense as well, right? It's not like Aiden O'Connell's going to come back and you're going to just expect the Raiders to win, right? The Jaguars had a very nice day against the Jets in a game that they probably felt they could have won. Maybe they should have won. But regardless of that, it's still like a weird scenario where these two teams, we're not going to see them past this month. So it could be just a completely wild game where kind of anything goes, right? So with that in mind, I'm going to go with the Jaguars to win this game because they got basically I wrote on here because they got a win in the last month. The Raiders haven't won since September, I want to say, and they got a bunch of injuries to Max Crosby, and obviously Christian Wilkins has been out for a good amount of time. So I'm going to go with the Jaguars. I think offensively they're just playing a lot better, and the Raiders offensively haven't really drawn too much attention other than the fact that they got Brock Bowers. So we're going to go with the Jaguars, and the Raiders should be not trying to lose, like they don't care, but they need a high draft pick. So whether it be Shador, Travis Hunter, or Cam Ward, that should be their goal, really not winning these games at the end of the year. Then we got another scenario, unfortunately, where I don't really see these two teams kind of making it into the playoffs, unfortunately, and it's kind of weird how they kind of reflect each other in a way, just because the 49ers definitely, they were a team that people expected to be in the playoffs, and even the Dolphins, they were expected to make an even bigger jump this year, I would say, and actually not only get to the playoffs, but expected to play better. And the way that they ended last year, actually in the playoffs and things like that, I felt like people expecting them to get back in there, especially with the questions around the Bills and some questions around the Jets and things like that, and knowing that the Patriots were probably not going to be that good. The fact that they're 6-8, kind of like the 49ers are 6-8, both of them really being lackluster and very underwhelming this year, it kind of reflects, in both of them, right? One looks eerily similar to the other one, so I thought that was kind of interesting. And also in terms of injuries, there's some uncertainty whether or not Tyreek's going to play. Potentially Nick Bosa, Trent Williams was another one that's been out for a couple weeks. So you also have that on top of what we already talked about. And, just in terms of what we can look ahead to this game, the Miami offense the last game really didn't do too much. They had one of their worst performances since Tua came back against Houston, and how that defense really dominated that game. And you want to talk about bad and down offense, the 49ers also, their defense played great. Their defense played very good against the Rams, but offensively, they couldn't really get anything going except field goals. So, both of these two teams need I would say, morale booster rather than like a desperate win, because I don't think they're going to make the playoffs anyway. So I think a win would serve both of these teams very well. So in terms of who's going to win this game, I'm going to go with San Francisco, because I really liked how they looked when Dre Greenlaw came back, and he's questionable as of right now, but I'm really hoping he gets back out there, we see more of him, and that defense looked like almost completely new with him in there, alongside Fred Warner and Talanoa Hufanga coming back. So I think I like their defense a little bit more, and their offense isn't just going to kick field goals again. So we're going to go with the 49ers to win this game. And lastly here, on Sunday Night Football, we have the Buccaneers traveling to Dallas to take on the Cowboys. And the Buccaneers have been on fire recently. On offense, they've had 4 straight wins after their bye week, and now they're in first place in the NFC South. So life is good right now for the Buccaneers. They just dropped 40 points last week on the Chargers. They look like a sneaky team in the playoffs, right? One team that maybe you don't want to play, because offensively they're just a unit. They're a tank on offense, and they're able to put up a bunch of points, and it makes you nervous a little bit, right? Can you keep up with them if they're hitting on all cylinders? And they're one of the only teams, I think the only team, to beat the Lions and the Eagles, right? They're the only team to do that. So it kind of like gives you not hope for the Buccaneers, but like maybe like whoever plays them, it's not going to be an easy matchup by any means. So the fact that they're playing Dallas now in these circumstances, Dallas just got a nice win last week against the Panthers. For what it's worth, I know it's not much, but I picked the Panthers to win, if I'm not mistaken. So I was impressed with how the Cowboys looked, despite, the fact of where we are in the season. But in terms of this game, we're going to go with Tampa Bay, because Dallas only still has 1 win in their home stadium, and it was against the Giants, so it doesn't really count. So they're still, by my book, winless at home. And the Bucs are still, it's not a cakewalk. Like the Falcons have a pretty smooth end of the year as well. So they need to keep winning, and they're in a better spot than the Cowboys, obviously. So they're still playing for something, trying to keep their spot on top of the NFC South. So I'm going to go with the Buccaneers here to beat the Cowboys in Dallas and continue their winning streak, probably behind another great offensive performance, if I were to guess. So those are officially all of our picks for Week 16 in the NFL. All the games on Sunday should have, something to play for, except those 2 or 3 that we had to talk about. But, it's just another entertaining week of NFL this upcoming weekend, so we have that to look forward to. But in our last segment, I didn't get a chance to kind of react to the big news about Michael Penix and the Falcons, and really Kirk Cousins. So we're going to take the last segment to talk about that, the move and what our thoughts are on it, and also a little bit on Kirk Cousins as well. So we'll be right back with that to end the show.